All right, if I was smart, I probably would have prefaced this question with you guys earlier before we actually crack the mics here on Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation. But since we are sitting in front of actual microphones in an actual radio studio, my question is, have you seen the Howard Stern movie back like 15 years ago or so?
It was a lot more than 15, buddy.
Was it?
Oh, no. What a ridiculous question.
Okay.
Private Parts came out I want to say in the early 90s, didn't it?
Here's why I bring it up, is because there's a famous scene. Now, this is all told through Howard Stern, and what I'm guessing...
Have you seen the movie?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, just checking.
There's, I'm sure it qualifies as revisionist history in a lot of ways. He makes the NBC executives out to be complete buffoons, all right? The guys running
in the movie, yes.
In the movie. In fact... According to Howard Stern, they would lead the power poll of ineptitude, put it that way.
1997, Paul.
And so he's blowing up, national radio star. His ratings are off the hook, and they can't understand why, because the audience research that they've conducted, 50% of the audience loves him, so they listen. But 50% of the audience hates him, and they still listen because they want more ammunition to hate him with. Is that where we've come?
I feel like
Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, okay.
Because they just had record TV ratings in the AFC Championship. Have we gotten to that point where this nation divided, but they're still tuning in because it's a love-hate relationship with the Chiefs?
I thought for a minute there you were going to be talking about our podcast being hate listened to, or even your career, Paul. I don't know if that's how you built your career, is to build on hate. Well, listening.
I guess we know which category I fall into, in Darren's opinion.
How come people weren't watching because they wanted to see the Bills win and see the Bills play the Chiefs? Why is it all about Kansas City, Paul?
Could be.
Well, let's take the quick power poll. I know we've talked about this before. You are chief fatigued, or you are not chief fatigued?
Beyond fatigued, yes. In fact, I'm ready to take
You're currently sleeping on the Chiefs.
I need a mental health wellness day. I'm so fatigued by the Chiefs. That's how bad it is around here.
Put that in the sauna, please, Paul.
I got to reach out to HR with my wants and needs around here.
Danny?
We only talk about fatigue of the Chiefs because sitting right here with the two of you, I got to say, we want to talk about fatigue.
Oof, we're 2 minutes in and we're already diving down.
No, I am not quite fatigued on the Chiefs dynasty, is what you could fairly call it. Now, if Kansas City does win the Super Bowl against Philly, ask me this time next year and how I'm feeling on that front.
Well, then the other reason I brought up, I know the nation was pulling for the Bills, and that's a good point, but the Chiefs just topped their own record for a conference championship game set last year when the Bills were not involved. So,
you mean viewership?
Viewership, yeah, just sheer audience numbers.
I mean, it is the NFL, Paul.
And at the same time, you don't have a lot of options right now to watch football, so if you want to watch football,
it's true.
That's your only option.
Yeah.
So we know you would prefer that the Eagles end up winning the Super Bowl.
For a couple of reasons. Number one, you know what? Give some love to Bradley Cooper. Okay, I think.
Yeah, he's had a tough life.
Exactly.
You're a big Bradley Cooper fan.
Yeah, I thought he was pretty solid. In terms of musical talent, I thought he was pretty solid in A Star Is Born with Lady Gaga. So I think the two of them combined top Taylor Swift. That's just me. It's my own opinion. Thanks for asking. By the way, the AP writer actually gave us a pretty detailed breakdown of her outfit, Taylor Swift's outfit. I don't know. Again, he did this again.
Wait, seriously?
Oh yeah, it happened again. Where was the actual breakdown? This is a football beat writer. Here we go. While she was decked out in Chanel for their divisional round win over Houston, which we detailed earlier, and there was great detail in that description, Taylor Swift opted for a sleek black and gold Louis Vuitton look for the AFC title game, including a jacquard knit jacket that retails for $5,000 and a stocking cap with a list price of $830. Should have really read that beforehand.
Probably.
Should have checked the pronunciation in there. Another regrettable moment.
We have not gotten to the new segment of Getting Cultured with Danny, and we probably won't this week, but Paul wants to just jump right on it.
Well, you can start with that one, Danny. Next week you can actually
I was not a fan of her outfit this past week, if you were wondering.
There you go.
I liked the Chanel outfit better.
There you go.
So Bradley Cooper and then Taylor Swift, what she's wearing is why you're rooting for the Eagles?
No, that's a sub reason.
Oh, sorry.
That'd be 1B.
Okay.
1A. And I'm so glad you asked, Darren. 1A
I'm
is
here for you, Paul.
Because
I thought that was Bradley Cooper.
I think it has an actual direct application to the Arizona Cardinals.
And everybody listening going, thank God.
How do you beat, how do you top, how do you vanquish Patrick Mahomes? There's only one Patrick Mahomes. What do you do as a team, as an organization, the other 31 teams? What do you do? He's not going away anytime soon.
Thank God he's in the AFC.
Well, guess what? You cram it vertical. You're laughing.
Sorry, I had to be on cover 2, the Cards cover 2 this week, and me and Craig had a couple-minute discussion about your love for cram it vertical. So I'm sorry.
Did you see the graphic afterwards where they had the quote from Saquon Barkley, and he talked about how this season with this team is a referendum on how you can get to a Super Bowl by running the ball. And honestly, the way Patrick Mahomes is playing, which is always just that much better than anything you can throw at him, that's probably your only chance, is if you can build a team like Philadelphia. And have we not talked about this the last 2 weeks? I'm not just jumping on the bandwagon here. You look at this Eagles team, and I see where the Cardinals in particular want to go. This is what they want to build. A top-ranked defense, dynamic, dominant offensive line, and then you run the ball. And so I'm really curious. I'm going to ignore all the hoopla leading up to the Super Bowl because talk about fatigue. We know all we need to know and want to know about the Chiefs. But when it comes kickoff on February 9th in New Orleans, boom, right there, edge of the seat. I want to see if the Philly formula can beat Patrick Mahomes.
I would agree, that the Cardinals seem like they're trending towards wanting to be that exact kind of team. I would agree that there are only so many ways you can beat the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes right now. One of them would include getting a couple of turnovers and making sure you don't turn it over yourself, which is not easy. And 3, I know it's probably not the same for you, but I'm just as tired of the Philly story as I am the Chiefs. I'm so Saquon Barkley is an amazing player, but I'm not a fan of the Eagles in the first place, and just I feel like it's been so much Eagles. I've heard more about Nick Sirianni and A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts.
Remember when Philly was coming for Nick Sirianni's head about a month and a half ago?
How about 3 weeks ago?
3 weeks ago? When I was watching the Commanders-Eagles game, I texted my dad. I said, oof, not that I'm a Cowboys fan by any means, but as somebody who grew up in Dallas, I couldn't find it in me to find a way to cheer for either team. Now, I love a good football game, and so that was enjoyable to watch on that front, but it's hard to cheer one way or the other. If we are going to talk about the dynasty and the respect that the Chiefs have deserved, Philly has their own right to a certain part of that. And really with the tush push and how they are completely unstoppable, and you have people online clamoring about officials changing the rules when you've got Patrick Mahomes as a runner and sliding and drawing in these calls that are seemingly unfair. And then you've got people on the other end calling for a ban of the tush push because the Eagles just are unstoppable, and any defense going up against them just gets penalty after penalty, and it's a rugby play for some people, and that's how they describe it, and that should be removed. So if you're going to talk about the respect for the Chiefs, you also have to give your respect to Philly and what they've been able to do. It's very easy to say you want to run the ball down their throats. It's another to do it as consistently and as in such a dominating fashion, the way Philly has on such a consistent basis. Huge props to Saquon Barkley on that. That offensive line, though, with the Eagles is stellar. You cannot pull off what they are pulling off if you don't have 5 of some of the best at their position working together in tandem. You did leave something off your list, though, of why you might be cheering for Philly.
I got my pen right here. Go
ahead.
Here
we go.
Jennifer Lawrence.
As a sitcom fan, Paul, how could you forget Abbott Elementary? Because if the Philadelphia Eagles win, it would all but guarantee, Alex in the corner, our camera operator, has a smile on his face. If the Eagles win, it would guarantee an incredible episode of Abbott Elementary, which is set in Philly. Everybody is a huge Eagles fan on that show, and it would just be spectacular. Jalen Hurts was actually made a cameo as a guest.
You're
going to
go with Abbott Elementary over It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
You know, I have never watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia all the way through. I've been told I would like it.
Darren wanted you to say Saved by the Bell. I don't know where Saved by the Bell was said.
That
was in
Philly?
Bayside.
Oh, yeah.
There you
Isn't
go.
that like
Come
your
on.
neck of the
There you go.
woods?
That was my roundabout way of revealing if Darren was a viewer or not. So we just got our answer. There we go.
I forgot. Paul never watches television in his entire life.
There are two sorts of NFL fans and only two types of NFL fans these days. Those who think the tush push should be legal and those who believe it should be illegal. Round the horn we go. Dani, legal or illegal? And by that I mean, should you be allowed to push a player from behind?
I guess if we're going to go with that definition, I would probably have to lean towards illegal. Although when you're watching it, you want to say legal because the argument is every other offense has the opportunity to do what Philadelphia is doing. They just can't seem to pull it off as consistently. So that's where I kind of teeter back and forth of, is it really that much of an advantage for the Eagles if every other team could do that? If they could pull it off, they just can't?
Darren?
At first blush, when it first started getting a big deal, I wasn't a fan. I think I've gotten to the point where I don't like it because I'm not because what's happened is it's moved beyond the tush push. The tush push I really don't like. You said they compare it to rugby. It is a rugby play. It literally looks like a rugby play how they line up. So it's there's no difference. But we have now gotten to the point where how many of these running backs and or ball pass catchers are getting like extra 3, 4, 5 yards when you got these two offensive linemen barreling down to the group? And the Cardinals have done it themselves. I mean, last year with the Trey McBride touchdown against Baltimore, it's happened before. Like, look, if you've got a quarterback, if Jalen Hurts is all that, then let him get it without being pushed from behind. You could still do all the other stuff the same. You just can't get pushed from behind. Yeah. And you shouldn't be able to push a runner or the pile going forward. You shouldn't be able to. The other one, which is illegal, and they're not calling it anymore, is the offensive lineman grabbing the ball carrier near the goal line and carrying him over.
Yep.
That is illegal, and they don't call that either. So,
I mean, if you can't carry a ball carrier in, then why can you push him from behind? It's one or the other. It's all or none. So for me, I think it should be illegal. But we'll see.
Well, could you get even a little more detailed and talk about whether or not it's behind the line of scrimmage? Because that would eliminate. If you want to put the Trey McBride touchdown, for example, he was in front of the line of scrimmage at that point, right? So maybe you leave that as a legal play, and the tush push becomes illegal because you're pushing him from behind the line of scrimmage.
The issue that I would have with that is then you. What happens if you're in a situation where there's a tush push and you think the guy, your quarterback, has gotten just to the line of scrimmage, and then you have your guys time it out, so as soon as he hits the line of scrimmage, then you're pushing him. And then it puts it back in the hands of the officials, which I think we all agree right now, speaking of feeling some kind of way, that at this point, do we really want officials making more judgment calls, especially on tight plays at the line of scrimmage, when all 22 guys are in one big pile? I don't think we want that.
Yeah. So here we go. Kansas City, 9th straight playoff win. Kansas City has won 17 straight one-possession games.
Can you imagine winning 9 straight postseason games?
Do you think they're getting bored yet?
I really wanted to say viewers are, and then they came out with the record TV ratings earlier today, so shut it. I'm not going to bring that up anymore. Did you see where Mitchell Schwartz, the former All-Pro right tackle, took exception to everyone citing all the favorable play, referee calls and everything else, and he tweeted out, maybe the Chiefs are better coached and don't hit quarterbacks late or in the head and neck area. Back in my day, teams who got less penalties were considered better coached. Insane. So there was that bit, a little
I will say, I understand some of the complaint, the amount of people complaining about the call. It gets so. I taught my son as he was growing up, like, we all watched the Suns in our house, especially when they were really good and in the playoffs and everything. I mean, I swear to God, I'm probably exaggerating at this point, but I'm fairly certain that Game 7, 87-point loss to the Mavericks or whatever it was, I'm pretty sure my son blamed it on the refs. Like, come on. Like, let's get over it.
That's not winning behavior. And that's foreshadowing to what we have coming up a little bit later, a brand new segment. Here's one I'm guessing you guys don't follow. Former D-backs pitcher Brandon McCarthy on X. He's a master of snark.
Yes, he's pretty good at that.
So after the Super Bowl matchup was set, he tweeted out, "Personally, I'm getting sick of baseball's financial structure. Give us a salary cap so we can have parity like the NFL."
Okay.
So not bad. Not bad. Well done. As he's taking exception to all the haters
we could have
of
a whole
baseball.
podcast on that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brandon.
Yeah.
Sorry. Never mind. I'm gonna.
So there's that. By the way, when you look at what's coming up in this game, how competitive do you think it's going to be? How equipped do you think Philly is going to be? Kyle Vandenbosch made a comment about how Vic Fangio, obviously the defensive coordinator, big difference maker. You saw Jalen Hurts. Here's something else interesting about Jalen Hurts, right? He ran for 3 touchdowns. Let's see, who else has a running quarterback who's capable of that? Oh, the Cardinals. But then what he said afterwards about how they, quote, let me out of my straitjacket a little bit today, that was curious about his passing yards and his ability to get the passing game in gear. And so I found that really intriguing what he had to say about that and what sort of application that might have to the Cardinals, right? Because I'm not sure what happened before and after the bye, but was it a case of maybe Kyler got a little more aggressive after the bye and it resulted in the 8 interceptions where he maybe didn't take as many chances before the bye with the 3 interceptions?
I have a hard time saying it's him being aggressive or not. It felt more as I'm thinking about, and we would talk about it every week, because I think in almost every game the Cardinals recorded a fumble or an interception. They didn't lose possession every time, but they did record having the ball on the ground in some fashion, and it didn't necessarily feel like aggression, more so just decision making of, even if the play had already broken down, making the wrong decision of putting the ball in harm's way is what it feels like on a broader scale, as opposed to just saying he was being aggressive and they were trying to move the ball down the chain, move the, you know what I'm saying there,
yeah.
move the chains or something like that. Like think about Minnesota. Like it was less about being aggressive to me and more about poor decision making.
Because once again, valuing the ball, I don't know if there's one lesson learned in this postseason, in this playoffs. We know what happened in the divisional round, right? The 4 victorious teams had 0 turnovers committed, and the 4 losing teams combined for 10 turnovers committed. And then you have a Washington team that had 4 turnovers. That was a game for a while until they started turning the ball over and they just beat themselves.
I firmly believe that. You can say whatever you want about the Eagles and being able to run the ball and everything. In every, not the last interception, but the 3 fumbles, in every case, I feel like the Commanders were moving the ball and feeling like they were heading towards scores, and the Eagles ended up scoring touchdowns after each one of those turnovers. I mean, when you win by, 18? Did they win by 18? No, they won by
55-23 was the final.
Okay, so again, you can't hurt yourself. I've said this before. It feels like that is becoming a bigger and bigger thing every year in the NFL, is making sure that you don't turn the ball. The best teams make sure they hardly ever turn the ball over. I mean, we've seen some historic lack of turnover streaks for some of these good teams. The Chiefs, that fumble was like the first time that they had lost a fumble or turned the ball over in forever. The Bills have barely turned the ball over this season and didn't this weekend. I mean, I guess you could talk about the stop on 4th down as resulting like a turnover, but they didn't turn the ball over. You can't do it because with the way teams play now and how much it hurts, and it all goes into like the 4th down plays now. Like everything is thrown into this statistical vat, and people are making decisions, and they're realizing like if you take care of the ball, it really changes the equation.
All All right, so speaking of self-inflicted and beating yourself, right, and before we move on from the Eagles and the Super Bowl matchup here, it's time for a brand new segment.
I'm so sorry to cut you off. If this is the last we're going to talk about Eagles and Chiefs, though, I do have to bring something up. And I know you love a good conspiracy theory, Paul.
Okay, lay it on me.
We talked about this last year, and now we can talk about it again.
If I had a tinfoil hat, I'd put it on.
The Super Bowl logo color conspiracy theory. Do not roll your eyes, Darren.
That wasn't a rolling eyes. That was me throwing my head back.
So the Super Bowl logo in New Orleans.
He didn't just roll his eyes. He had a seizure.
It is red. It is red and green. Okay, Chiefs, Eagles. Last year in Vegas, it was a purplish, reddish combination. Chiefs, 49ers. In Arizona, it was the green and then the red and purple with the desert. Eagles and Chiefs. The year before that, it was more of a red, orange, yellow ombre situation. You had the Bengals and the Rams.
So,
and if you don't believe me, go look this up on Twitter.
So it's 4 years in a row is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
What about the 55 years before that?
Well, Darren, you were alive those years. You tell me.
I can tell you the year the Cardinals made the Super Bowl, the blue and green of Tampa Bay in Super Bowl 43 was certainly not the colors of the two Super Bowl teams.
Has the logo for next year's been? It has. Alex is shaking his head yes.
So do you have any other stats on who wears the white jersey and who wears the home uniforms? Because the Eagles are going to wear the Kelly green.
Yes,
and
actually, I thought I saw
white.
somewhere it was like 12 of the past 15 winners of wearing white, something like that.
Okay. All right. You know what? Hashtag no math. Here we go. Winning behavior in 3, 2, 1.
I see you on the show!
Can you display winning behavior? You have to consistently display winning behavior.
That's winning behavior.
You got to define what winning behavior is and hold people to that standard.
Yes.
Wow, Paul, I didn't know you made an appearance in that audio.
Come on, you
clip.
know that you know that's Wolf, right? Is that Wolf? Who was that? All I know is Jonathan Gannon. He espouses winning behavior. Easier said than done, and sometimes when it's not winning behavior, it's out of your control. Maybe you're trying hard, the try-hard person and just can't get it done. But there's some things that are self-inflicted that are very correctable and controllable. Like, Darren, when you proofread a story, right, what's the first thing you look for? As someone in the print business, it happened to you just the other day. You were watching a video, and what's the first thing you look for?
Oh, misspellings, misspelled names.
Okay. So that brings us to the mayor of Philadelphia, who was celebrating and started to lead a chant.
This was before the NFC Championship.
Yeah, and it went something like this.
E-L-G-S-E-S, Eagles! Let's go, Birds!
Oof. If the audience seemed a little confounded and befuddled and bewildered, that's because they were after she shouted out E-L-G-S-E-S. So
Elgus.
She then she came back with a vengeance though later and said, you know how you spell Eagles, and then she spelled out Super Bowl and she spelled it correctly. So okay, well done, not bad there. Did you see the video?
That's not winning behavior.
No, it's definitely not winning behavior. This one maybe isn't quite as black and white. Bit of a gray area when you see on video that went viral an Eagles fan cooking a pig in a shopping cart. Full blown, on a spit, except the spit is the shopping cart and there's charcoal and flames underneath it.
He was on a train, transporting that to his tailgate, which is the best part. I think that is winning behavior. Now, I do think it is kind of gross if you're sitting on the train and you've got like this pig carcass. I can't say looking at you because the eyes are shut, but that is kind of gross. I saw the picture.
Okay.
So I do know that. Thank you very much. But I will say, if I'm going to a tailgate and that is the commitment that somebody is putting towards the food they are making for my tailgate, winning behavior.
I'm going to say it's not winning behavior for everybody who doesn't live in Philadelphia, but clearly it's a whole different stratosphere.
I mean, I say that as someone who doesn't eat pork, so winning behavior.
As someone who used to ride BART from Oakland to San Francisco every day for 4 years, I've seen a lot of non-winning behavior on public transportation, but that's neither here nor there. How about the Eagles fan? Oh, look, up in the sky, Eagles fan atop the light pole.
And does it get more Philly than this? An Eagles fan in a Kelly Green Barkley jersey climbing a pole near City Hall, and then someone tosses him a copy of Inner Excellence, and he's reading it from the pole there. You know, that's the book that A.J. Brown is reading on the sideline.
Yep.
That's Fox Philadelphia with the read right there. And yeah, so then all of a sudden, you ever been to one, like in college, you ever go on those sessions where they're reciting poetry? He's just reading from the book and everyone's gathered around.
Of course.
Yeah.
Again, Philadelphia winning behavior is probably different than most winning behavior. And again, like, it's only funny until somebody loses an eye. Like, if you're climbing up there on a street light.
Well,
okay, but teamwork to help get him up there, to toss the book to him, to make it a good enough throw, winning behavior in my book.
the one I saw, he made it down okay, so but he lost his freedom as the police were there ready to cuff him.
Boo, not winning behavior by the
Exactly.
police.
Now, the degree of difficulty by getting up the street light when it was greased, not bad.
Yeah.
So,
Again,
Spider-Man.
I wish I could believe it was all organically about wanting to get up on a street light and read. But unfortunately, in this day and age of social media, I feel like it's all performative, Paul.
I see. So look at me. Performance art, can you call it in a way? Performance art? I mean, that goes back decades.
Again, probably for Philadelphia, you could.
I see. All right,
We've
Darren.
talked more about Philadelphia today than I
Yeah,
would
Zach
rather.
Gershman's not even
Can we be
on
done
this
with
show.
this for
You're
the
right.
next
Okay.
forever?
You're right. Let's talk about Miami. Jimmy Butler. Winning behavior.
Yeah,
Well, I
Darren.
can tell you right now, that's definitely not
Future
winning
son.
behavior. He can't even get on the court.
So Jimmy Butler, if you're scoring at home, has been suspended for the third time this month. And like I've been saying for weeks now, and it's funny because Brian Windhorst came out and said, yeah, his price is coming down. Imagine that, because every time he gets suspended, he's a depreciating asset. So maybe this works in the Suns' favor, and they don't have to give up nearly as much as they would have a month ago.
Butler walked out of shoot-around because he was told he wasn't going to start,
right.
so he left and got
Yeah.
suspended. Has made it clear he wants to be traded, and I mean, at this point, I don't follow Suns or NBA basketball close enough to know as many details as you do, Darren. Is that a future Sun? Is that winning
No.
behavior for the Phoenix Suns?
It's first of all, he's not coming to Phoenix because it's going to be it's a complicated mess, and we're not going to get into that on this podcast. But I will say this: it's super frustrating when you are talking about a guy making $50 million a year that he can't get his act together and do his job while he's getting paid $50 million a year, and make it very clear behind the scenes that he wants to go do something else. I'm sure that they would probably try and figure something out if he made it very clear behind the scenes. But, you know, I guess this is where we are with some of that, and I'm just an old head and whatever.
Yeah,
I could definitely talk about this for a while, but let's just say definitely not winning behavior.
We call it walking out of shoot-around. The team, in an official statement, called it intentionally withholding services.
Yeah, so they're going to intentionally withhold his paycheck.
Exactly. So, that works out well for both of them.
Paul, how'd you feel about the Raiders hiring Coach Double Rainbow?
Oh.
Pete Carroll's
I
back,
did think of
back
you,
in the
Paul, when
NFL,
that
baby.
Yeah. And there's Marshawn Lynch yelling out in the back of the room.
Yeah.
The whole. By the way, Marshawn, from one guy to another, someone who used to live in Oakland, why would you celebrate the Raiders when they left your town and left you high and dry? Don't support the Raiders anymore. You played for the Seahawks. Come on now.
Didn't I also see the Seahawks, their Twitter account, put something out congratulating Coach Carroll on being hired by the Raiders, which I thought was an interesting move.
Well, remember, he didn't. Weren't any untoward happenings there. He left on his own.
Mutually parted ways.
Yeah,
Sure.
but 2 years ago.
Sure, exactly. But yes,
To
me, I still think that there's an unrealized rivalry between the Arizona Cardinals and the Las Vegas Raiders. I do believe they should play every preseason at the least, Vegas and Phoenix. Let's get the rivalry going to some degree.
Let's just make a trade. We'll trade the Rams to the AFC West and bring the Raiders into the NFC West, and then the Raiders can play the Seahawks, and then they can have this rivalry with the Cardinals.
Where do the Raiders
Make it
pick?
so, Paul.
Where do the Raiders pick in the draft? Because if
6.
now you got Tom Brady,
They're picking
quarterback.
6.
Are they going to take a quarterback?
By the way, real quick, I like that concept. Can we swap out Seattle for the Rams? Because Seattle used to be in the AFC. Send Seattle back
Seattle's
to the
the best
You really
city we
hate
visit.
Seattle.
No.
You really
No.
hate Seattle.
Why? Where would you rather visit?
I'm all about the shorter plane rides. See, then you'd be closer proximity to California teams and then Vegas. That'd be ideal.
I don't want to lose it. We already lost the Bay Area basically because we have to go to freaking Santa Clara and San Jose.
I know. I can't sit here with a straight face and tell you.
I will say, at least the Raiders at Allegiant Stadium, they have full-size candy bars in the press box, so that is a plus.
Would you like to give a quick power poll, the press box fair?
You know
Dani,
what? I could if you really wanted. Not right now. I have any time to prep. I mean, I pretty much do that to Darren on the road when I sit next to Darren anyway. He already gets that earful every week.
That'll be a future winning behavior.
This is an honest question. The Pro Bowl games are where now? Where are they? Fort Lauderdale? Is it Orlando? Where is it?
Orlando.
Fort Lauderdale. Where'd you get that?
Well, maybe Kyle Vandenbosch went to a Pro Bowl in Fort Lauderdale. We were talking about that earlier today. I got a little confused.
No, he didn't.
That's what he said.
I'm thinking he's mistaken. Really? Okay. I didn't know there was one in Fort Lauderdale ever.
So speaking of power polls,
yes,
we're on the Red Sea Report, and I said, you know what? If you had to pick just 2 players in this current roster and go through one of these Pro Bowl games, like all these, dodgeball, whatever else they're creating, just general athleticism.
The general athleticism
just
Pro Bowl.
2 best athletes who, any kind of schoolyard games or whatever. You know what? I'm going with Trey McBride, Trey McPlay, and I'm going with Budda Baker. And then I realized, no, wait a minute. Kyler Murray was drafted 9th overall in the Major League Baseball draft. So give me your top 3, give me your top 5 best all-around athletes on this team. Just sheer athleticism, can play any sport, at any time.
Can we include Trey McBride and Budda Baker since they are going to the Pro Bowl?
What would be your top 3?
Top 3? You said top 5.
Top 5. Give me top 5. I'm flexible.
I would include McBride and Baker.
Okay.
I would include Kyler Murray.
Okay.
I got to think about this now. I got to think through the roster in my head.
I threw out there
Rabbit?
that's not bad.
Good.
I threw out there Sean Murphy Bunting, like he was a 3-sports star in high school, and that's why he was, he ended up going to Central Michigan because he was under the radar.
What about like Mac Wilson Sr.? Pretty athletic.
All right, well here we go. Let me go over what we're talking about here, so maybe this will clarify something.
Yeah,
there's obviously the flag football game on Sunday.
Okay.
And then there's 4 skills competitions that day. Whatever the heck the EA Sports Madden NFL 25 challenge is. I'm assuming it's actually playing the video game, so there's some of that.
Okay.
So Punt Perfect, the Great Football Race, and Tug of War. Those are happening. I think the Great Football Race is one where they're like doing sleds and like blocking sleds and they got to push one of their teammates or something like that. And then on Thursday, the skill competitions are passing the test, which I'm assuming is passing, satisfying catches, have no idea what that is, the big spike, really have no idea what that is, but I'm guessing Trey McBride would be good at it, relay race, helmet harmony, what?
Wow.
and dodgeball. See, I'm reading the story and says, if you want to know what's going on, here's what's happening. But then they just name them, and that's like doesn't explain what it would be.
It's just
that's not helpful. But I do think Darius Robinson is athletic, and Michael Wilson is a name we haven't mentioned, who I think would be pretty good at whatever those games are.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I mean, let's face it. There's probably a lot of guys in that locker room who would be pretty good at it. Except for maybe.
Well, Trey Benson.
Yeah, Trey Benson.
Think about his combine last year.
If you asked Jonathan Gannon, he would be included in there too.
No, he wouldn't. Yeah. No, because he'll say, I hurt my hip. I can't do those things anymore.
I see. If you're Trey McBride and you're going to the Pro Bowl, which you are for the very first time, which player do you think, and I should have asked him this before he was gone for the offseason, which player do you think he's going to most look forward to interacting with? Wolf tells a famous story. His first Pro Bowl, his locker was next to Walter Payton.
Didn't he tell a story about Lawrence Taylor, too, at the Pro Bowl?
Yeah, there was an LT story on that one as well. But, here you are, your first Pro Bowl. You walk into that locker room, and you probably take a moment and just gaze at all the names, all the name placards above those lockers. And, I mean, if there's one guy, Trey McBride, because they have
tight end. So it would be NFC?
Yeah, they have tight end U.
Well, no, it's not going to be Kittle.
So it's not going to be any of those guys.
It's got to be somebody who doesn't interact with very much. Who's in the NFC that is like, but are any of these guys like longtime stars anymore?
Yeah, it's a good point.
I try and make those once in a while, Paul.
Yeah. All right. You know what? Save that for next week.
Okay.
We'll ask.
I mean, if you're
we'll ask
looking
him
for
that.
NFC defense, I mean, he sees Nick Bosa, but Micah Parsons, he's on the roster.
See, I'd be, to me, the way Paul framed that, it would have to be somebody who's been around for a while. Like, I don't know if Micah Parsons fits that. Micah Parsons is like a year older than Trey McBride, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
There's not a Jerry Rice. There's not a Walter Payton. There's not a Rod Woodson. You know, somebody like that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there is, but I'm not thinking of
Mike Evans might be the most tenured.
Mike Evans might be somebody, but with all due respect to Mike Evans, who is a fantastic player and one of the more underrated players in this league, are you melting down if you happen to run into him? I like Mike Evans, but it's not Emmitt Smith. It's not Joe Montana.
By the way, speaking of standout edge rushers, do you see where earlier today Cleveland GM Andrew Berry said at the Senior Bowl that he would not listen to any offers for Myles Garrett?
Myles Garrett's not getting traded.
That.
Max Crosby's not getting traded. Let's all move on.
Come on, that's no fun. You know, if you're
I know it's no fun, but that's what's happening.
If you're going to extinguish the trade rumors, at least give us the offseason to speculate about it. Do you have to do it in January?
I don't know.
As soon as Coach Double Rainbow got hired, Max Crosby was off the market.
Mac Wilson Sr. was trying pretty hard to recruit Max Crosby on Twitter when Max Crosby, let me get this out.
Yeah, that is true.
Max Crosby tweeted, let me see. He tweeted saying, quote, "Undisputed, they will wish they treated you better when times were tough. The fake always expose themselves. #limitless. And Wilson Sr. quote tweeted this and said, "You'll look great in Cardinal red." And then George Kittle chimed in and said that Mac was lying because obviously doesn't want to see Max Crosby play in the division.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that brings us to B.J. Ojulari. If we go to azcardinals.com, Darren, there's an update of sorts on B.J. Ojulari. What can you tell us?
About as updated as you're going to get. Just I talked to him near the end of the season and finally got a chance to write it. And, you know, he's in a good place. He feels like he might even be a little bit ahead of schedule, although when you tried to pin him down over whether he might be back for some offseason stuff, he backed off that pretty quick, and he's like, that's up, we'll see where we are when we're there, and that's up to doctors and other people. We'll see how I feel. But I do think he's going to be back. The question then becomes, what are you expecting for B.J. Ojulari this year, assuming he is healthy going into training camp or soon after training camp starts, and how does that fit into whatever other plan you might have for edge rusher, especially assuming people like Max Crosby and Myles Garrett are not on the market, which I don't expect them to be.
Because really he played half his rookie year, correct? How many games did he play his rookie year? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I think it was more than half. It wasn't. Yeah. He did deal with a hamstring thing, and then he had to have knee surgery, a minor knee thing. So he was kind of delayed out of the box. When he finally got out there, he flashed. I do think he played more than half the season. And they were obviously very high on what he was able to do when they were coming into this season, and then he tore his ACL in practice, which happens. It's funny, there's a mailbag question this week where people were saying last year Monty Ossenfort focused his free agency search on guys that were always healthy, and then all those guys got hurt. And would that change what his mind was? And the guy brought up a couple of names that could be free agents. One was a defensive end and one was a guard, and like, would he maybe consider these guys, even though they suffered fairly major injuries this year because they hadn't been hurt before? Might he change his mind? And look, I will never forget Corey Redding after Corey Peters tore his Achilles or whatever he did in training camp practice, and they brought in Corey Redding, who was a veteran defensive tackle at the time. It was right before the 2015 season started, and obviously that turned out to be a very good year for the Cardinals.
Yep.
And Corey Redding was kind of brought in as like the sage veteran to talk to the media about this injury. And I'll never forget his face, and it was just very matter of fact. And he goes, guys, if you play in the NFL, it's not a question of if you're going to get hurt, it's a question of when. And that's what I always think about whenever guys get hurt.
It's going to be a big question mark as we get throughout the offseason and in a couple months closer to training camp, because right before Ojulari got hurt last year, he was getting reps with the starters, opposite of Zaven Collins. So You have to make sure that there isn't a fall off there, and then you have to temper any sort of expectations of understanding he just went an entire year of not playing football. So that's going to have to be taken into account. And now you're having to also start looking at whatever the expected moves are going to be made this offseason in that outside linebackers room. Dennis Gardeck, somebody else who's coming off a knee injury that took him out for most of the season, is a pending free agent. What do you want to do with players like Julian Okwara? What did you see from rookie Xavier Thomas, and what is an expected jump from year 1 to year 2? I expect that position room to be something that is addressed, whether that is through the draft or you're looking in free agency, because that is a pretty young and inexperienced room. And I do think that isn't a room that would value from experience there. So when you're talking about Ojulari, he was putting off some really nice things on tape before he got hurt last year. So you just have to hope that you see a continuation from there as opposed to any sort of fall off. And I really do think when we're talking about what we expect to see from him next season, I think you really can't say until you get closer to that point, because I do think that's going to be a position that is addressed in the offseason.
I don't think there's any question, because in part, you have the option to not make a lot of moves with your current roster and clear a lot of space if that's what you choose to do. Danny mentioned Dennis Gardeck is a free agent. Baron Browning is a free agent. I think Okwara is a free agent. Jesse Luketa is a free agent. I mean, there's a lot of guys on that list that if you want to bring them back, you have work to do to get them back under contract. That doesn't mean they won't be, but you have some leeway in terms of if we want to have spots in that room, then they're there.
And look, we've talked about it. Is there any way you can go from 17 different players with 1 sack apiece to one player with 17 sacks? And to Darren's point that he will make repeatedly and with justification, that guy ain't going to be available in the offseason, either via trade or free agency. So you're looking at number 16 overall. To me, that's your chance at getting the premier pass rusher. And a lot of people say, well, maybe that's too low to even have. No, Jared Verse came out of 19 a year ago. So it is doable. It is feasible. It is possible. Is that where the Cardinals go at 16 overall? We'll see if there's a dominant interior defensive lineman there. I wouldn't be
16,
shocked.
you mean?
At 16?
Yeah.
Look at the Super Bowl right now. Chris Jones, Jalen Carter. To me, that's where those defenses start.
Right, but and Chris Jones is a little different. I mean, Jalen Carter is a top 10 pick. I believe he was a top 10 pick. I'm pretty sure he was. The true game wreckers are probably not going to be there at 16. Now, I know you mentioned Jared Verse, but there were a little bit of questions about him. And as great as Jared Verse was, which I would kill to have Jared Verse on this defense, it's not like he had 15 sacks this year. So again, what are you trying to get out of it? You want a disruptor. You want a guy who pressures the quarterback. That's Jared Verse. That doesn't necessarily translate into 12 or 15 sacks a year per se. The other thing I noticed, bigger picture, when you're talking about those things, I've now seen a couple of mentions that at this point, and we've got a long way in the draft process, at this point, a lot of teams only see 10 guys that deserve first-round grades, 12 guys that deserve first-round grades.
Wow.
Now, that doesn't mean there won't be 32 first-round picks. There will be. But when we talk about teams with first-round grades on these guys, that means if you're picking and the vast majority of these guys, even if you're taking in the first round, you better not be holding your breath that they're going to be some kind of next-level superstar right out of the box, because that's not how they are being seen. And I've seen that about the edge guys in particular. I saw somebody say the other day, there's some decent edge guys, but there aren't. That guy isn't in this draft probably, and might not be there at 16. Like the guys you're going to take at 16 in another kind of draft, you maybe feel more comfortable taking them at 25. So we'll see what happens.
And you don't have the luxury of 4, 5, even 6 first-round quarterbacks this year either that are going to push position players down the board in front of you. So that's not ideal. I know both Mel Kiper and Daniel Jeremiah have come out with their mock drafts 1.0. For what it's worth, you had Daniel Jeremiah getting the edge from Georgia. Jalen Walker, a little undersized, 6'2", 245, more of a speed, athletic guy going to the Cardinals at number 16. So there you go. There's your first mock right out of the gate. And when I see him, I think of Nolan Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles, who's had a heck of a postseason. He's been a real nuisance with his athleticism off the edge. So I'm curious what that brings the rest of this offseason, how many different names are attached to the Cardinals. Mel Kiper had a guard out of Alabama going to the Cardinals. So you could easily see either position, interior offensive line,
absolutely.
Defensive line.
I will say this, and I said this to Craig on Cover 2, barring what might happen in free agency, I will be stunned if that first pick isn't a lineman on one side of the ball or the other. Maybe an edge guy, which I guess is on the precipice of being, I mean, you could make the argument that's not necessarily the line, but it's going to be one of those three spots, I would think.
All right, last year, first round, obviously, number 4 overall, they took Marvin Harrison Jr. I know at azcardinals.com you did a little comparison with Marvin Harrison Sr. The numbers are remarkable from one rookie season from father to son. Like, same number of targets they had as rookies. And I always think of Marvin Harrison Sr. as playing with Peyton Manning the entirety of his career, but as you point out, no, he had Jim Harbaugh his rookie year.
He had
senior.
Peyton Manning didn't show up until, what, 98?
So it'd been his
so
third
Harrison
year?
was his third. That was his third year. So yeah, Jim Harbaugh was throwing the ball to.
Jim Harbaugh has like 3 off-season surgeries scheduled, by the way. So all the best to the Chargers head coach. He's still dealing with injuries from his play. Did you say there's somebody listed the other day? So like literally 3 different injuries. So I don't know. Maybe he's throwing the ball with. See, Pete Carroll, with the Raiders, if you're going to warm up before the game for a good half hour throwing the football, be very careful. Things start to break and blow out of your shoulder at that age.
What is Pete Carroll? 73.
73. Yes.
I will be feeling pretty good about myself if I can act and move around like that at 73.
These are the numbers that Darren put in his story. So Marvin Harrison Sr., 64 receptions on 118 targets over 16 games his rookie season for 836 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Okay.
In one more game for Marvin Harrison Jr., although Darren did mention briefly played in Green Bay because of a concussion, 62 receptions on 118 targets, 885 yards, 8 touchdowns.
That's remarkable.
Almost identical across the board.
Yeah.
And then Senior went on to become a Hall of Fame receiver.
Yeah. And you know what? You know what the best news to me going into the offseason with Marvin Harrison Jr. is? He did not call it a success.
Yes.
Specifically asked in his last media session about the success of his rookie year, and he said, no, I wouldn't call it a success. Now, he didn't call it a failure. It wasn't a failure. But then to hear Kyler Murray at the very end of the season say, you know what? It can be better. It should be better. It will be better. Jonathan Gannon even saying, you know what? Yeah, there's room to maximize more of his game and his potential. So all 3 of those guys have the same mindset going into year 2.
Here's I want to ask you this question. I got this in the mailbag this week. It was a general question over if I thought if there was anybody who underperformed player-wise this year for the Cardinals. But with Marvin specifically, do you think A, he underperformed, and B, do you think he thinks he underperformed?
That's hard to answer the second question of whatever his own expectations were and what he was told was expected of him. I do not think that Marvin Harrison Jr. underperformed in his rookie year.
So I'm with you.
I do think that you saw good things in the numbers that we were just talking about, and I also think you saw with the eye test. You saw as the season went on, he got more comfortable, things started to slow down for him a bit, and the trust was building with his quarterback in those crunch time moments looking for your number 1 receiver. You need more consistency, though. There were too many times where Harrison would have a great game and then be silent for the next couple of games. Or he would pop off in the first quarter and not get another target until late in the fourth. And that's a combination of what the defense is showing you and what is your quarterback is seeing, the plays being called, all of those things. If you're drafted 4th overall and you're going to come in and you're going to be a number 1 receiver, you have to be a threat as a number 1 receiver at all times in the game. And I don't think that was consistent enough throughout the season. That will come with time. That will come with confidence. And that's what is the expected jump from year 1 to year 2, which is what wide receivers coach Drew Terrell talked about with the media near the end of the season of wanting to see that jump from the confidence of Marvin Harrison Jr. being like, you know what, I'm here. I know I'm good enough to be here. I'm going to go prove it to you. And I think that's what's going to be worked on in this offseason. I don't think he underperformed. I think it is still fair to say that to come in as the number one receiver as the 4th overall pick, it was not consistent enough.
Yeah, and it was interesting, Drew Terrell, and you had the quote in your story, and it's a good reminder where he said, you know what? I tell all the receivers, hey, they're defending us.
Yeah.
We dictate to them. And so I think if there is one big takeaway that Marvin Harrison Jr. can bring into his second season, yes, maybe it is more that aggression. And you're here to defend me. I'm not reacting to what you do. It's vice versa. But to answer your question, I would go with option B, where you said, do you think that Marvin thinks he didn't fulfill expectations? Based on, and we all stood there and listened to him in front of his locker every single week, yeah, I think he thinks he was going to have a more productive rookie season.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Although, again, it doesn't have to be one or the other. I mean, you could think he underperformed and he could think he don't. I struggle a little bit. I've been doing this a long time. So when you start talking about expectations, I think of things as a whole. And to me, ultimately, and people can argue with me, and that's fine. And heck, the players or Jonathan Gannon can argue with me, and that's fine. This team ended up with a record right about where I thought it was going to be when the season started. And the players did about what I expected them individually before the season started. The ones that give me pause, like Darius Robinson, I was thinking might do a little bit more, but the injury changed everything. And, you know, one of the things we don't even talk about, like, he literally didn't do a full practice all year. Like, even though he came back and played the last 6-7 games, whatever it was, he was literally limited in practice every day, the entirety of the season that he even practiced. So it's hard for me to say, well, he underperformed. He was hurt. So now,
and I would say at the very end of the year, there were a few comments where if you read between the lines, he was still not 100%.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm not a. You are who you are. Like the Cardinals don't have people. I mean, people want to talk about Kyler, and he talked about wanting to be more consistent. But in reality, for me, like, he played like he did before he got hurt, which is he's good a lot of the time, and there's other times where you're wishing he was more consistent. He hasn't gotten to that level where you're thinking he's going to be super awesome all the time. So why, you know?
That is the big question for Kyler Murray, I think. Has he hit his ceiling? Is there another level? Are you going to see it in 2025? As for Marvin Harrison Jr., I'll make 3 quick points, and you guys stop me if you disagree or you want to add to anything. Had a chance the last 2 weeks to interview Frank Sanders, former Cardinals receiving great, right? He was number 3 all-time Cardinals rookie season in terms of yards receiving, right behind Marvin Harrison Jr. And
Anquan.
And then Roy Jetstream Green last week, and they both said a couple of things. Number one, in hindsight, they would have liked to have seen Marvin Harrison Jr. play in the preseason to get more acclimated for the regular season. Marvin Harrison Jr. mentioned as much at his locker early in the regular season.
Old guys tend to say guys should play in the preseason more, though.
Frank made a point that when he was a rookie, he had Rob Moore as his number 1 receiver.
True.
When Larry was a rookie, he had Anquan Bolden coming off a Rookie of the Year campaign.
True.
So Marvin Harrison Jr. was wide receiver 1 from day 1. So he got everyone's best corner. You know, he got the utmost attention from every defensive coordinator. Here's the other thing. This is just me. If you go after the Rams game, Week 17, going into the finale, and Marvin had a really good game, remember, at L.A., and he said, I had some different routes that I got to run against the Rams. This is to the media. And then you had Drew Petzing say, you know, he won some one-on-ones, he played fast, he played violent, he played aggressive. You know, Kyler mentioned, you know, we put him in position to win. Okay? So maybe different things at different times. And I bring that up because it was Baker Mayfield who said recently, and they had to replace their offensive coordinator, obviously, with Mr. Duval himself going down to Jacksonville.
Not winning behavior.
Baker Mayfield said that good offenses run plays that cater to players' strengths. And he said, yeah, I know that sounds simple. Not every offense does that effectively. So do you think as the season went on, the Cardinals did a better job of realizing what his strengths were, what the best plays were, what the best routes were, how to dial up Marvin Harrison Jr. as the season went on? And maybe some of that was mitigated, because you didn't play in the preseason, although I get it, everything's vanilla, and he probably wouldn't have been playing with Kyler anyway. But it does make me think, okay, now they have a real, true handle on the best way to utilize him, what plays to call in year 2.
That's fair. I think about using Harrison across the middle and in Miami in the middle of the season, and then didn't see that again for a couple of weeks. So that's the question mark. That's the hesitancy there of, if you did see that work, are you not doing that on a more consistent basis because that's not what you want from your offense, because that's not what the defense is showing you, because the receiver or the quarterback doesn't like that? That's the hesitancy there of, yeah, you want to say, okay, something's working, you want to keep that up, but that was really just the last 2 weeks of the season. Again, you're talking about the inconsistency on a week-to-week basis. It wasn't until the last 2 games of the regular season where Harrison eclipsed 50 yards receiving on a back-to-back basis.
And what are most rookies? Inconsistent, right?
Which is yes, it's absolutely fair to consider when you're looking at the year Harrison had. So, anyway, I thought that was to come full circle back to Darren's story, and I thought it was really interesting to point out and just see, okay, Marvin Harrison Jr. versus senior, year 1 to year 2. We'll see how that unfolds and elapses. What else do we miss here? Anything else? Some type of way, speaking of the offseason and the beginning here, Darren, do you want to explain exactly what you mean by that?
By some type of way? Well, this is something else that we would like to kind of throw in there. We don't have any cool opening. I'm sure as a producer you'll be all over that, Paul. At some point you'll put something together. But I think feeling some type of way and talking about certain things, we're gonna bring that up. Hopefully on a weekly basis, we'll find out what happens. I know everybody's missing.
We might not
the
be
wise
feeling
guy.
a sort of way about something.
That's right.
On a week-to-week
if we're not
basis.
feeling some sort of way, then we're not, and that's just how it is. But I needed to bring this up. As we get to the end of January, I have done dry January. I don't know if you have ever
this year
taken part
or
of this.
just in the past.
No, I've this month, and let me tell you something. There's been a couple of moments where I'm been sorely tested on that, big time.
See, that's not feasible for me because I go to Barrett Jackson, the car show, and it's just not going to work. So can I pick a different month?
You can do whatever you want.
Okay.
And well, see, here's the thing. Here's the twist. At my house, I did dry January for alcohol. Not that I'm a huge drinker or anything like that, but, on the weekend it'd be nice to have a beer or a mixed drink of some sort, especially when, again, certain things come up and you really, really were wishing you could just have a beverage like that, which I will not bring up on the air because that would not be fair to the people that I would be talking about. However, my wife did a different kind of dry January because she drinks very little anyways. She chose to do dry January for Amazon shopping. And I will give her credit, she has not. Which, coming off of December and Christmas, where it was like a house of fire, I've been very impressed she's been able to avoid that.
I'm excited to see what February looks like for your Amazon purchases.
Would you be able to do that there, Dani?
Which one?
Either one.
Amazon?
What would be easier for you to do?
Here's the thing. Both. I live, but look, I live alone. I don't have kids, right? I'm sure that comes into play of you guys wanting to get stuff for your house or anything like that.
My kids are out of the house.
Okay, but still, getting stuff for them or whatever that might be. Dry January, I'm not a big drinker. I will say I do think that would be tough in social settings. If we go out to dinner and you want to get a bottle of wine or whatever that might be. Although I'm not a big enough drinker to where it's holy smokes, dry January really opened up my eyes.
You're no Clue Haywood?
No.
Okay, go ahead. Yes.
So did you like dry January?
Again, most of the time I was fine.
Did you learn something about yourself, as many people hope to do?
Well, see, here's how I feel. I feel in some kind of way about something. For me, it's the ability to do something, to accomplish something, even if it's in the absence of, in this case, taking any alcohol. For me, it's the challenge of saying, I'm going to do this no matter what. I like to have tasks like that so I can say, hell yeah, I can do that. Now, again, that is what it is. Just like I'm going to run and Pat's run in April, that's something I like to try and accomplish in a certain amount of time. Although, as we talked about earlier, and Pete Carroll being in great shape, I'm realizing as I'm trying to do a little bit of training for Pat's run is my knees aren't going to have that's not going to be a forever thing for me. We're coming to the end of the Pat's runs for Darren Urban, but it's something to accomplish. That's the main reason I would do it. I'm not really sure why my wife did it, but again, proud of her that she is.
Okay, so can I get the clip where you explained about how there was a dry Amazon? Because I need that at Casa Calvisi. Okay, that in best practices, we need to implement that.
Do you think your wife would be willing to do that?
Most definitely not, but maybe somehow it can be instituted in some way.
I gotta say, I would put down big bucks as somebody who's not allowed to bet that whatever the number of Amazon packages comes to your houses combined is not even remotely close to the amount of Amazon packages that go to my house, and not because of my mom.
Because your dad?
Addicted to Amazon.
I'm surprised you're bringing up your dad. We never talk about him.
I know,
on this
he's a loyal listener. He won't appreciate that, but maybe he'll be inspired for Dry Amazon February.
Okay. There's your challenge, Brian. No Amazon for a month, baby.
I'd settle for dry Cheeto. No more items for the dog.
Okay,
that's what I'd settle for at this point. And that'll do it for this edition of Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.